Hey guys, Brad with Family Handyman. Dovetail joinery has been a hallmark of craftsmanship for centuries, and there are many ways to cut dovetail joints, including a router with a special jig. But today I'm going to show you how I learned how to cut them by hand using a saw and chisels. So let's get started. After milling your parts to final dimension, use a marking gauge to lay out the depth of the dovetails on each piece. For through dovetails like these, that depth is equal to the board's thickness. Lay out the tails using a marking knife. Unlike even a sharp pencil, a line cut by a marking knife is exact. The size of your dovetails is up to you, but there should be a half pin on both edges of the pin boards. Set the dovetail's angle on a sliding T-bevel with its blade protruding both directions. This angle is really up to your discretion, but there are guidelines, and those are given traditionally in more of a rise and run format as opposed to degrees. And softwoods are traditionally 6:1 and hardwoods are 8:1. Using a square and a marking knife, transfer the tail marks across the ends of the tail boards. From there, bring the tail layout down the other face of the tailboard. So now we've got all of our dovetails laid out, and it's time to start cutting. And what we'll do is clamp them vertically in the vise, and we'll use this saw. Staying just outside of your layout marks, saw down each line just shy of the depth line. If you like, you can mark the waste areas to be cut out so that you don't cut on the wrong side of the lines. You can cut off the pin space waste on the outer edges now as well. So now we've got our tails cut, lines right down to the depth line, and we're going to set up right here on the edge of the bench to chop out those pin spaces. Starting inside the depth line, just wiggle the chisel up to the line. Next, set the chisel on the layout line, press down lightly, and wiggle the chisel up to the depth line again. This method sets the dovetail depth accurately. If you chop in hard right on the line, the chisel will push its way past your layout mark. Once you've chiseled down about 1/8 of an inch, you can start more aggressive chopping. Leave the outer ends of the pin waist intact and proceed until you're about halfway through the board's thickness. Leaving the outer ends of the pin waist intact gives them support when you're chopping from the other side, helping to prevent tear out. Start the second side as you did the first side, just wiggling up to the line. Then proceed with chopping each tail all the way through. Go lightly as you reach the end. Clamp your tail boards in a vise and use a chisel to pare the tails to their layout lines. Be sure to look at both sides of the board so you keep the tails perfectly square. So our tails are cut out. Now we're going to set up in the vise to transfer those tails onto the end of the pin board. Set your tails on the ends of the pin boards and transfer their layout using a marking knife. Next, use a square to mark the pins down to the depth lines on both sides of the pin boards. Cut the pins as you did the tails, staying just inside the layout lines and stopping just short of the depth line. Chop out the first side of the tail spaces exactly as you did the pin spaces, using the chisel wiggle method to get an accurate start. Flip the pin boards and finish chopping the tail waist out. It's a little trickier than the pin waist, as you're chiseling an angled cut. Pare the pins to their layout lines. Again, be careful to pay attention to both sides of the board to keep everything square. So now we've got our tails and our pins cut and cleaned up. Now we just have to test the fit and make any necessary adjustments. Mark the areas that need material removed and carefully pare off a bit at a time, checking the fit often so you don't overdo it. A good fit only requires a light tapping with a mallet. All right, we've got our joint fit, and now all we need to do is the same procedure on the other three corners, then we can assemble this little box. All right, so we got all our tails and pins cut. We're ready to assemble, so we'll apply glue to each joint one at a time and press them together. With the glue applied, you may have to be a bit more forceful with your mallet. There likely will be some gaps that bug you. I almost always have a couple, especially if I'm a little out of practice. But don't worry, you can fill them and make them disappear. Cut small wedges from an extra board. Make several vertical cuts, then saw the wedges free by cutting in from the side. Make wedges with grain going vertically as well as across the grain, so you can easily match the grain at the gaps. Spread a little glue on the wedge and slip it into the gap. When the glue is dry, cut off any extra material and sand the repaired area. If a wedge breaks off while you're tapping it in place, don't worry about it. It's fine as long as the wedge sticks up above the surface. And we'll just glue in a bottom to finish off this little box. So there you have our finished simple box. And the main focus of this, of course, was to learn how to cut dovetail joints by hand. And so I hope you've figured it out enough to be comfortable giving it a try yourself. For more cool projects like this, visit us at familyhandyman.com.